MONKHAMMERS. It's Forge Hammers with Monk Ropes, and it absolutely slaps. You can use this weapon in open world, PvE, PvP, mists, corrupted dungeons, solo ganking, small scale, even ZvZs on Brawl Comp. It's really strong and extremely underrated. I will show you. There is a lot of variability in this build. You can swap things around, but two things are absolutely vital. First, the Forge Hammers, and second, the Monk Ropes. Why are the Monk Ropes important? Well, without the Monk Ropes, you cannot really call these MONKHAMMERS, can you? Stop asking me such silly questions. Just put on the ropes and make your opponents repent. The Forge Hammers E makes you choke. Not only does this give you the ideal height for your Tinder profile, it also provides you with substantial bonus to your defenses. This allows you to wear cloth armor and still brawl like a tank. Alternatively, since you don't need the defensives, you can put on Stalker Jacket and do big damage with your chest. Your first Q is very powerful and does big damage, so put on the Carrion Cape and do the big damage twice. This also gives you an incredible clearing speed for camps and abbeys and PvE in general. In PvP, the strategy is deceptively simple and can be generalized in few steps. Fight when big, kite when small. This weapon might just be my next favorite. I will show you some of the fights and explain how I play it. Usually, battle axes are a difficult matchup, especially if they have IP advantage, as the advantage is most felt while brawling. However, this particular player uses all of their cooldowns to dismount me, so that should even things out. I brawl with them while I'm big and chunky. I don't use my Stalker Jacket until the end, otherwise they could deny my Stalker Jacket and my chunkiness with a single cleric roll, which they kinda do by the end, so I disengage. Ideally, I'd like to wait for my next E before I brawl again, but I was afraid that they would run away, so I took an unfavorable trade to give them some motivation. And by this point, they are pretty much cooked. My E is back up, my mobility will be back up shortly, and they just wasted their shoes. GG. These Brawler Gloves are overcharged and will probably look for a fight. I make sure to prepare. I eat my food, I swap my potion. The build they are running is kind of a one-shot build. Its strategy is to come at me from a distance, do big damage, reset cooldown, and then finish me with another big damage. The trick to countering this is a well-executed defensive. But can I pull it off? They wait for me to dismount them and I just do it with my auto attacks. I don't want to waste my Carrion Cape. The moment they are off their horse, I'm prepared to pop my E and tank their first big damage. Even despite my chunkiness and magic resist, this hurts much more than I anticipated. The Duskweaver helmet is not only used for chasing people, I can also use it for running away. I always come pre-equipped with a cabbage soup, which have saved my life at many occasions. I hear them pop their shoes, so that means they're probably going for the next big combo. I drink Gigantify potion in anticipation. I tank it layered with my E, so I receive almost no damage. I use my Mage Robe to counter their Inferno Shield and keep brawling. Once I see them meditate, I get a bit worried. I remember how much damage did the first combo do, so I'm not sure I can withstand another one. But perhaps I would have executed them before they finish their combo. They are low HP after all. They swap for a pretty decent kiting playstyle, but Forge Hammers eat kiters. Flamewalker with a Demon Cape? I guess the point of their build is to just abuse the IP difference and go seal clubbing. Jokes on them, I'm on cloth and I'm chunky. I have pretty good magic resist. Once my chunkiness wears off, I kite away. Now I'm pretending to be scared, but really I'm just waiting for my next E to come online.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Maybe you're asking, wouldn't Assassin Jacket play well with Forge Hammers? Well, it could, but you need to keep in mind that your own E can interrupt your jacket. This happens anytime a player enters the aura. Players already inside of it won't interrupt it unless they re-enter. Also keep in mind that slowing people with your aura basically puts you in combat and might prevent you from zoning in tough situations. Here I break the rule and kite away even though I'm chonky. I do this to counter their W. Mercenary Hood reduces the damage the opponent deals, so I yell into their face, and when they do their big combo, I receive almost no damage. I jump out of the damage just in case, and now they just try to run away. They pop adrenaline boost for the movement speed, but don't attack these mobs in here, which was a mistake. Adrenaline boost lasts longer if they attack something, but it ends up not mattering. I yell at them to slow down and finish the job. Fighting kiters is incredibly easy because of the insane catch-up potential of this build. The strategy is simple, just use all your mobility to get on top of them and bash them over the head. I wait for as long as possible before swinging in to make them waste their shoes. I get a few swings at them, but despite my best efforts, they get away. That's perfectly fine. I can just walk away and wait for the next rotation of my cooldowns. If they want to catch me up, they will have to use some of their mobilities, which closes the distance and suits me. As they do here, they waste their shoes while all of my cooldowns are back online. And I can even slow them down with my giant aura. Just need to make sure to press all of my buttons and output as much damage as possible, which is a lot as I'm on cloth armor. So far, you've seen me use the Duskweaver helmet. This helmet is ideal when fighting kiters, but when facing opponents that don't move that much, it's completely useless. Not even its second skill is any use against fire staffs or cursed staffs. However, I mostly run low tiers, so carrying a swap helmet with you is extremely cheap. For example, a 5.1 Guardian helmet costs you about as much as a Gigantify potion. Just as you would swap potions in a fight, you can swap your helmets. Of course, on a high tier this could get expensive, but on low ones, why not? Before fighting this fire staff, you can see me take my sweet time inspecting them. They are running a turret build, which just likes to stand in place and spam Qs. I swap my skills to the brawly ones so that I can out-brawl them. An important part is the Geek Potion, which allows me to just simply walk through their firewall. Fire staffs are a good matchup as I have several interrupts in my kit. I can use them to cancel their E. Furthermore, when my E is active, I gain excellent magic resistance. Geek pot to walk through their firewall. I'm too slow with my interrupt and get a full E to my face. This would have been a fatal mistake with many other weapons, but Forge Hammers can just eat fire staff E's. I yell at them to lower their damage, and when they drink an Invis potion, I just swing my hammer around and luckily I find them. Taking damage disables the invisibility. When fighting melee weapons, like these dual swords in here, I don't have to use my mobility to close the distance. They will have to come to me eventually. Dual swords in particular like to start either with their E, spinning blades, or with a blade cyclone W. The trick is to wait for this and react in time with something, possibly with my W in this case. Unfortunately, I still get the damage, as I was a little too slow, but the idea was correct. It could have worked. They kite away my E, which is the correct counterplay. You don't want to brawl with Forge Hammers when they are chunky. I see them stacking up on mobs, so I kite away again. I don't want to start the fight with them already having an advantage. And here I do a risky play and Gearswap. Had they noticed this, they would know I'm on a 10 seconds cooldown and my life would be basically over. But they didn't notice. I killed the squirrel, don't want to give them any more free stacks. And I keep kiting until my cooldowns are back. Now I can counter their engage with my helmet. Guardian helmet is best used as a counter to something, like what I did here. They tried to kite away from my E again, but this time I don't let them. I pop a preventive mage robe as I expect their mercenary jacket to come online anytime soon. And once they hide in their undead cape, I misinput my W and let them get away. But they agree to go again. Usually this would be prefaced with about 2 minutes of waiting around for their undead cape to come back online. But they don't wait for it, which is a huge advantage for me and I'm happy to take it. Once again, I see them start stacking up on mobs, so I kite away. There's no reason for me to give them such an advantage. I will simply wait until their stacks fall off and only then I will brawl. Once they pop their shoes, I match them with mine. They purge my run and jump me, so I counter with helmet and we start brawling. This suits me as I'm in my giant form. I'm waiting for them to activate their mercenary jacket. The moment they do it, I counter with my mage ropes and purge it, along with their stacks. Once my giant form wears off, I kite away. Now I don't want to brawl. They correctly don't want to let me do that, so they stick on top of me and bash me over the head. I managed to kite them around just long enough for my E to come back online. Still, dual swords can almost outbrawl me through it. Almost. In this clip, I'm on royal boots instead of Duskweaver helmet, so I still have an insane catch-up potential. This bow of Badon player does a pretty good job of keeping their distance and poking me from afar. Once they see me start marching, they kite back, which is the correct play. I have nothing more to catch them with, so my plan is to kite back and wait for my next cooldown rotation, and they correctly punish me for it by poking me from afar. This is not going the way I had hoped for. Luckily, this made them feel a bit too overconfident, and they use some of their mobility to catch up with me. I immediately turn back on them and bash them over the head. Well, at least I try, but this bow is slippery and slips from underneath my fingers once more. Once their storm cloud disappears, I start marching again, and maybe I should have done that sooner, honestly. And once again, they keep me away nicely, so I use the remainder of my boots to create some space and wait for my next cooldowns. And I'm kinda hoping they will waste their mobility again to try and catch me, which they do with their shoes, so I turn back on them immediately. I'm getting my ass kicked here, so I use my royal boots to run away and go for a full reset. Psych! That's what they thought. But they slip away again and now I'm really worried. They come too close, but I still need to hit them in their undead cape. Luckily there's a particle effect that betrays their location, and I managed to just barely clutch this. Nature staffs are not a good PvP weapon, at least not in solo. The reason is that if the fight goes my way, they have no mobility, so they cannot run away, I will always catch them. And if the fight doesn't go my way, I can just run away, they have no mobility, they cannot catch me. Consider this fight as an example. I see them pop their mercenary jacket, so I just kite away. Then we just brawl a little, nothing special happening here. But eventually I realized that I actually don't want to be in this fight anymore. So I wait for them to use their W. And once they do that, I can freely use my royal boots to march away. Since they don't have the W, they cannot interrupt me. They cannot catch me, I simply reset the fight. Their mistake was trying to catch me in the first place, as now that I'm fresh, I can try again, and if it doesn't pan out, I can just reset indefinitely. There really isn't anything they can do. Maybe, I don't know, if you run like Duskweaver helmet or royal boots, maybe then you could cook some build with the nature stuff. I'm not sure, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see me try. Anyway, the strategy here is the same as always. Fight when I'm chunky, kite when I'm small. The nice thing about my E is the slow aura. If the opponent tries to use boots to get away, they are quite ineffective because of the slow. By the way, thank you so much for watching these videos, I really appreciate it. I have a lot more on the way, so if you don't want to miss them, consider clicking that subscribe button down there. They tried to run away, but no mobility, yeah, pointless. After dealing with the nature stuff, this happens. This guy just dismounts next to me, then starts rolling his face on the keyboard, pressing random buttons. Unfortunately, my mana is low from the previous fight, so I have to run away, I cannot stay in this fight. The problem with Bloodletters is that they actually have pretty good mobility, so outrunning them is difficult. For now, I kite away their resist potion, but eventually I will need to try and outbrawl them, even with no mana. Here I honestly thought, that's it, let's call it a draw. But they actually came back for a second round, and I respect that. Big up for anyone willing to take risks. I see they have not regenerated fully, so I try to take an advantage of that and start the fight while they are still missing 1 bar of HP. Of course, I'm still missing a lot of mana, so let's hope this ends up well. Normally I'd try to kite after becoming small, but outrunning Bloodletters is difficult, so I outbrawl them. They end up eating my entire jacket, and that makes me very happy. When fighting Bloodletters, it's important to never get your health drop behind 40% or 2 bars. Because if that happens, they can just execute you with their E